it's difficult. It's difficult to retain employees. It's difficult to retain employees. And I was thinking about this, and I was discussing this with some colleagues and some folks that I was coaching that are in the HR space. And I was asking more specifically, there's the VP of talent acquisition for a major company, and I said, "Hey, I'm curious. Like, I know you track these metrics. How much does it cost to hire an employee?" And they said, "Well, it depends on the level." And I said, "Well, I mean, could you give me an average? Could you give me an average?" And he said, "Well, yeah, if for us, it's about $55,000. I was just like, $55,000. Wow. I knew it was a lot. I just didn't realize it was that much. And she was saying, "Oh, it's a heck of a lot more the higher up you go." And I said, "Wow. How much do you spend in employee development?" And she's like, "Oh, it's about $1,000 a year." I was like, are you kidding me? That seems really odd.
Per employee?
Per employee.
Mm.
Yeah, about $1,000 per year per employee on training. And I said, that equation seems rather tilted. So I started digging into this, and this is really the genesis of this particular program. I just wanted to get more information about it. Like, was that normal? It just didn't seem normal to me. I think you might know where this is going, that actually it's a little more normal than I thought. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll start sharing some stuff with you. And certainly if you want this PowerPoint, I'm happy to send it to you. Just feel free to shoot me your email address in the chat, and feel free to put any comments that you'd like in the chat, and feel free to give me a thumbs up, applause, everything except the middle finger. I will welcome. But so the grass is greener. Hopefully you can all see my screen okay. You can see my PowerPoint okay? All right, thumb up, thank you, thank you. So I started thinking about this, and it's just like, are we putting too much into replacing? Are we devoting too much resources into replacing employees versus nourishing? So first thing I looked at is the cost of hiring. And this is widely available. You can just Google what are the costs of hiring, and you would see information such as this. Now, I got this information from SHRM. SHRM has all sorts of statistics on this, but as you can see, for entry-level employees, it's usually, somewhere between 30 to 50%, about 40% of their annual salary to replace them. Mid-level, about 150%. High-level specialized employees, about 200% of their annual salary. And this is also from what I remember. I used to be a VP of talent as well. These numbers haven't really changed too much, I would say, over the past decade, over the past 10, 15 years or so. So I don't think that really has moved that much. Correct me if I'm wrong. So for those of you who are listening in, does this kind of align with what you've heard and what you understand as well?
I would say, Jonathan, it absolutely does. Kind of what we're seeing. And even previously in a previous role that I worked in staffing, virtual staffing, this was something that was a common challenge for organizations who were trying to put into place, years ago, before virtual was a thing, virtual workers. And one of the things that we would often talk about was the cost of hiring and then being able to keep and retain these individuals. And the price, to your point, this 30 to 50%, that's huge. And then when you lose these folks, you're doing it all over again. So why not just do what you can to keep them?
Yeah. And to that point, Robin, so we now know that tenure is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So when I first entered the workforce, it wasn't uncommon for someone to work for the same company 20, 30, 40 years. I'm now hearing, well, I won't, now that we're recording this, I won't mention the company, but there was a recruiter that I know out in Silicon Valley, and she was telling me, oh yeah, we've got like average tenure is like 5 months, 6 months. It's like a revolving door. And sometimes we rehire the same people like 2 or 3 times. And wow. And each time they have to like, they go through the same interview process over and over again. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the variables that go into the cost of hiring. So, we're all, and welcome, Darlene. I see Darlene is here. Welcome. So we'd love to hear from y'all. What are some of the variables that go into hiring? What are some of the reasons why it might be so expensive?
The amount of time it takes to fill the position. So that means that there's somebody who's not doing that specific job while they're trying to find somebody to fill it.
Yeah, so there's also the loss of productivity there. Yeah. Yep. What else? What are some of the cost variables?
Darlene has put in the chat, completing a job assessment and knowing what competencies
Yeah.
you need to today and the future.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank God for cut and paste. So yeah, this is, I'll put this under the category of job requisitioning. When I was the VP of talent, I spent a lot of my time helping managers fill out the job requisitions. And to your point, Darlene, figuring out what the qualifications or competencies that they were looking for. Absolutely. What else? What are some of the other variables that you can think
the
of?
tools and systems are used for, so business systems and tools or resources, you're paying for those. So whether you're subscribing to Indeed or any of the other platforms.
Yeah, Indeed. Well, Monster. Is Monster still around?
Yes.
Okay. You just don't hear about it as much.
They have a particular niche.
Yeah, so the Darlene had put in the manager time. To interview and screen. Yeah.
Let's say the team's time to interview and screen. Now people go through they go through 5 interviews these days. So it's like, it's not even just the manager. It's like, I don't even know how they coordinate with 5 interviews, 5-phase interviews anymore. That's just ridiculous.
Oh yeah. I have some shocking quotes that I'm going to share with you about that just blew my mind. Yes. So what else?
How about if they make an offer, somebody accepts it, but then that person changes their mind and they have to start the process all over again?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I still think that's a made up rule. I would hate to be in talent acquisitions.
Yeah. Yeah. So possibility of the job offer being declined. Yeah. So you have to start all over again. All over again. Absolutely. Yeah. So I took the liberty, and this is a sheet that I've used before to capture hiring costs. And again, in my previous life, I started quantifying some of this stuff. And this was in the Southeast here. So the costs will not be that variable. So we already talked about this, the recruitment or interview team time. So this is not only HR, this is all the hiring managers. These are the additional staff that you would include. And I found that it was like 30% of the hired employee's salary, roughly, or upwards to 40% if it was an executive. So I just took a basic midpoint benchmark of 75K per year, if that's what you're hiring at. And so in my role at the time, it averaged out to be 22,500 approximately. So that's just the time. That's just the time that we put into it. And then if you use, if you outsource, so if you use an outside recruiter like a Russell Reynolds or, any of the outside agencies, typically it's like 25% of their first year salary. So again, if we're talking about 75K, that's another 25K. And then as I think Neil had mentioned, the job posting fees, you've got the background checks, you've got the testing services. Now the tests are really increasing.
Mm.
Somebody had told me that they went through 4 different assessments, 4 different assessments before they were hired. Now that to me seems like it's overkill, but
I heard they have a test now that determines whether or not if you're employable.
oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I wouldn't, not surprised at all.
Mhm.
So there's the testing services, possible employee referral bonus, which at the time the company I was working for was $1,000. Relocation, which I found the relocation was like 5,500. That's on average. There's a lot of variables there because it depended, of course, where they're coming from and what level they were at. Job training at the time, and this was not too long ago. This was about 5-6 years ago. It was averaging about 1,300 just to get somebody upskilled to the point where they're productive. So it's first year training cost. Website, so we had to update the career page, and then stuff. That's desk, chair, phone, all the necessary stuff to keep the employee connected. So when I tabulate all this stuff and when I added all this stuff, it was $60,000. This is for a mid-level employee. So that number that I threw out, Robin, that we were talking about earlier, that 55K, that aligns with what I experienced again about 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So this, I think, I'm pretty confident about this number. So we're talking about approximately $60,000 just to hire somebody. So now it starts to get kind of interesting. And what I'd like you to do, please, take a look at some of these quotes. This is just recently, I asked people for their recent hiring or interviewing experience. Check out some of these quotes. Hopefully you can read that okay. This last one is from a HR executive, by the way. What is this telling us? Now, this, by the way, these are just 3 samples. I received several. I received close to a dozen that were pretty much saying the same thing.
Sounds like no one knows what they're doing at the top. There's no strategy around onboarding or hiring in general.
Yeah.
This is a waste.
There was about 20 years ago for a school project. Class was called Performance Systems Analysis. We went into, and this is the state of Florida. So it's a state, and so I would expect that maybe in a governmental setting. I'm sorry to say that, but in a more corporate setting. But it took them, and they found that the people would get picked off. And but what I think the underlying tendency is, everybody was afraid to sign off. We went through every single little step, and I think they were afraid to sign off for whatever reason. It was the biggest fear.
Yeah.
And Margie, I'll tell you, that's been my experience too. Very few managers were willing to say, you know what, 3 interviews, that's fine. If we can't make a decision at that point, we're incompetent, let's just move on. Very few people wanted to take on the full decision themselves, the accountability of bringing on that talent. Again, I've been hearing this so often now, but this, like, I was interviewed 14 times. Would you even want to work for a company that could
I'm
make a
done
decision?
after the second one. I promise you. It ain't no way. And then it's 3 to 4K each flight. Is that reimbursable? Like, first, who has 3 to 4K each flight just to be flying people around the US?
Now, Neil, in their defense, this was a higher level position.
I don't care. That's out of line. No.
This was an executive position. I agree with you though. Like 14 is
We're gonna do
certainly
4K times 14. Let's
It's,
3 different.
now that, and this was the one that killed me too. It's just like,
That
okay,
blew me away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too, yeah.
what?
What?
Like, the
Insanity.
amount of money that they spent, and like a VP's time, a director's time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wait, hold on. Something's really off kilter here.
Wait,
Because this was, oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
oh, no, I was going to say, you have to wonder if they just, was the position worth more? And that's why they were jumping all the hoops, but they didn't want to pay more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's such a disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Huge, yeah, huge disconnect. That's what I'm picking up from this. Now, this last one, again, this is from an HR executive. This has been my experience. So back when I was doing hiring like 20 years ago, it was not like this. It was not like this. I mean, we did 3, maybe 5 interviews. Sometimes we do an assessment. Back in my day, it was the Wonderlic. A lot of companies use the Wonderlic. So, maybe we would do that, but I mean, this whole idea of doing 10 interviews was like unheard of. So this seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, this seems to me like a very recent trend, like over the past 10 years that we've been really ballooning the amount. And Margie, to your comment, maybe not, nobody wants to take the accountability for a bad hire.
What's worse is now, as far as the trends go, has been that people don't want to stay with a company for more than 2 years. And, when you talk about, I don't usually buy into the generational kind of thing. I think it's more of this kind of happens when you're in your 20s and this kind of happens when you're in 30s and that kind of thing. But what I have seen, and even because I did some career development courses, even 25 years ago when I took that, they were talking about people don't stay as long. It's even more pronounced now. So if this is going on the side of the company, and then you've got people that are only staying for 2 years, they're really not getting their return on investment.
Spot on. It's yeah. So just think, again, like tenure is shortening, so that 60,000. I mean, you might be doling that out every year to replace a person. On top of that, like if people are becoming increasingly less willing to be accountable for a bad hire, then that 14 interviews may become commonplace. So I started looking at this, and I said, like, there's got to be research out there. There's got to be data to say, at what point is it a zero return? At one point, does it just become silly? And actually, Google recently studied this. So Google, this is part of their people analytics team. They look to see, okay, is there a point where it just doesn't matter, like doing more interviews is just kind of a negative return? And they found that after 4 interviews, you're not going to get a different perspective or result. Oh, I'm sorry, Rhonda, I'm just reading your comment here. I wonder if it's because they did away with a 90-day probationary period. They're making people jump through more hoops, so it seems like they did their due diligence. Could be. Could be. I don't have a particular perspective on that. most of the employers I know still have some form of 90-day probation or something like that. So I'm still seeing that as present. But what do y'all think of this? And by the way, this is just one data point. I looked into this a little bit more, and there's an HBR article that basically said the same thing. That after 3 interviews, I mean, it's not going to skew either way. I mean, you've got 3 people who are, a yes, yes, no. Well, that's not really going to change that much. That trend is going to continue, that person is most likely a good hire. And even if you look at this chart here, what the people analytics at Google found is like, okay, 3 interviews, you're 80% there already. I don't know if you all saw Rhonda's chat comment. Yeah, if you're 4 dates in and you can't figure it out.
I mean, essentially, I mean, Rhonda's correct in a way. The company, the employee or potential employees kind of dating the employer and then vice versa. Because there's that conversation about, is this the right fit? Is this the right person for the role? But also when it comes down to the employee, they're thinking like, is this the right fit for me, the company? And that has been an increase as well. People on employer or employees or potential employees understanding and knowing their value as well.
Yeah. So it's a two-way
Mhm.
street.
Now, I will
And,
say this: if you have more than one, it's a good indicator of the culture of your organization if you have a 14-step interview process.
oh yeah. Yeah. And
I probably don't want to work for you.
yeah, and that gets back to this comment that this individual made. And this is actually a friend of mine who basically said, look, what I learned from all this is that they're indecisive and they waste resources. That's what I learned. I don't want to work for that company. Another side comment that they had made is all of that money that they put into selecting me, which is part of my inspiration for this program, they could have given me more money. They could have invested that in like more tuition reimbursement or additional training. Yeah, so I think this kind of establishes what we all know, that after 4 interviews, I would dare say after 3 interviews, you should know. At that point, it's just diminished returns to continue to throw people or resources into the interviewing process. That coupled with all the assessments that we hurl at people, and background checks, credit checks, whatever else we're doing, we should damn well know by that point. So the next data point that I was looking at is, all right, so $60,000 just to hire somebody. Okay, we're putting a lot of time and resources into that. Let me juxtapose that against how much money we're investing in employee development per year. Because we're talking about that great resignation. And I think we all know, ATD professionals here, I think we all know that, people want more training. They want more development. That's definitely a big part of the equation. So what do the statistics tell us? It's a sad story. It hasn't changed for over a decade. Over a decade, it's been about $1,200 on average per employee per year.
Why are they so scared?
They don't see the value. They don't see the value in training and development. They don't see the value in developing their people.
Now, I don't know about you all. When I saw this, it kind of broke my heart a little bit. I mean, I would expect to see, especially 2019, 2020, that was a bit of an aberration. This hasn't been updated, but look, that's relatively flat. It hasn't kept up with inflation, that's for dang sure. So I don't know, what are your reactions to this? Because I was kind of crestfallen when I saw this.
You just think about all the revenue leakage from all the employees that have left, but also from an employee standpoint, it's, when your employer provides you with training or, hey, we want you to participate in this development program because we really think you're skilled here or something, it creates that stickiness, oh gosh, like they really value me and I want to stay here because this is really interesting and they see something in me that maybe I haven't seen in myself, So looking at this, it's just, it's like you're on a merry-go-round and it just kind of, and there's so much turnover now that it's not surprising when you kind of look at these numbers and the lack of development that companies are investing their people.
Yeah.
No, there's an interesting note looking at this, and I posted something because I was kind of typing it away about during the 08, 09, and I know what company it was, a local company here, had an instructional design position posted for like 9 months. And I was like, oh my goodness, how long is it going to take? I mean, that means really getting in there and hustling to get up to get the end of year stuff. But notice how the year that has the most employee development. So we're thinking the recession 08, 09. But look at it, it was 2010. And so maybe that was at that point, which what's really sad is it's lower now than even 2010, but they were probably trying to attract people after the 08, 09 recession. That may have been part of it, but it's really pathetic that it's lower now. I think, especially like you said, the inflation, and now inflation's gone up. Well, that's before the pandemic, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
Or it ends at the point.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
My guess would be it would be lower because of COVID. I don't know.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I'm not sure. However, I did speak to a couple HR folks, senior level HR folks about, where has your spend gone? Has it gone, north or south during COVID? And they said, well, it hasn't changed that much, but the methods have changed, and also the population, the target population has changed.
Huh.
So the method has changed to, and again, this is only 4 people I spoke to about it. The method has changed to, of course, more virtual. And I think we all know that, right? So things have gone from the classroom to virtual. Also, the target, all 4 of them said the same thing. And these are senior level folks at large companies. They started putting more resources towards hypos, less towards line employees. And the rationale I heard from at least 2 of them was, well, you know what, the line employees, we're seeing a higher turnover. So why are we going to invest more money in them?
Plug the gap. You gotta plug the hole. You wanna
Yes, Neil.
You just want to let all the talent leave, huh? You just wanted to.
That's it's just like, oh, my tire is leaking, so
I have
let
a
me
slow
let more
leak.
air out of it.
Yes. Just don't worry about patching that. Just let it slowly leak. You know how much stress you're putting on your high potentials then? Because guess who's doing all the work? It's your hypos that are doing the work. They're actually overcompensating for the fact that there's a drain.
Yeah. Yeah, so much of this, and I hope you can see that this bothers me. So much of this seems like wasted time and resources in so many different ways. I mean, gosh, just put more time and resources into getting talent. We need to get that talent. We need to get, yeah, we'll kind of develop them when we get them in. Yeah, same level that we were before, but get them in, and then they leave, and it's silly to me. So I myself, I'm going to be a little bit more, or a lot more assertive and bold about stating this case. It just really bothers me. So when we think about it, and this is how I rendered it down. So take a look. So 50 times more. We spend 50 times more on hiring than we do on developing. That to me is not right. I would love to talk to any board of directors about it and say, like, is this seem right to you?
Would they do like can we just do a test for 1 year and just flip this right quick? Let's just 1 year and see if that,
Yeah,
like someone let me come in and just do a test. That's all I want to do. You know, you're wasting the money anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Let me come in and do a test.
right.
Seriously,
They're
you
only
need to write up
staying
a
for-
proposal. Yeah, totally do that. Write up a proposal, approach some big company and say, let's just do this experiment for 1 year and see what the results are.
Y'all are experimenting anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But well, here's the thing, and you know, I could see like 3 times more, 4 times more. Okay, I get that. Like, I would understand that, but 50 times more is just, it's borderline absurd. Absolutely borderline absurd, especially when we know, like, you know, it's the Great Resignation. What are we going to do? It's like, it's right here. The solution's right here. So I want to now start talking about potential solutions. So instead of just kind of decrying the fact that you know, we have this reality in front of us, I want to talk about what do we do then? And if we look at this hiring versus development, I think the solution is right there. And again, I'm happy to give you this, just if you could put in the chat your email, I'll be happy to send you the slide deck. So that way you have the resources. But there was a company called Lorman that they looked at 6,000, they surveyed 6,000 employees. And these employees just revealed some of their basic frustrations. And I think we all know this, we're all in this space. You know, more than half said that they didn't really have little to no workplace training, and they were largely self-taught. They figured stuff out on their own. They consulted Dr. Google, right? They went to YouTube. Most people want to learn. Yeah, thank you, Margie and Robin. Neil, could you do me a favor and just capture those emails?
I got them.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, most people want to learn. That's the thing. We know that most people want to learn, especially young people. They want to be plugged into these programs. It's, my gosh, it's just low-hanging fruit. And this just kills me. And this gets to your point, Rhonda, that you had mentioned. A lot of people just don't, it's just like, we're putting so much resources into like hypos, right? And, you know, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't do that. But what I'm saying is, can we democratize this a little bit? You know, maybe there's a variable in there. So maybe it's a 1.25 versus a 1, whatever the multiple is, but let's democratize development a little bit more. Let's invest in people. I was just recently in Ireland, and I was talking to somebody that's in our space, L&D professional. And I just asked them how to the Irish culture, corporate culture, how do they approach training and development? And they said, well, basically we train everybody all the time. And we're constantly cross-skilling and upskilling, because we never know when things are going to change. That just seems smart to me. That's apparently part of the EU spirit too. Now, of course, we all know EU, they manage people very differently, and most people have like 2-year contracts and things like that. So it's very different. But my gosh, I think there's something to be learned there. Yeah. So we wonder why there's a great resignation going on, right?
So the Great Resignation is not happening any other place?
Oh, it's happening all over the place. He said they still have challenges too. Now, Northern Ireland is different than the rest of Ireland. So Northern Ireland is, you know, they were part of Brexit, so now they're separate. They're seeing a mass exodus. They're seeing a huge Great Resignation, because a lot of employees want to still be part of the EU, and they want to be able to travel all throughout and work all throughout Europe. It's a bigger labor market. But in Southern Ireland, where they're still part of the EU, they're still happy. They're like, this is great. I can go work in Portugal. I can go work in Italy if I want to. So you still do have that, you know, I can work in different places. It's a big labor market out there. They have a better work-life balance, and yeah, Margie, you know, having a mandatory month off every year. Yeah. I'll take that.
I'll take it in a heartbeat.
So, again, talking about solutions now, and this is, Salesforce did a recent survey where they asked 600 learning and development professionals, knowledge workers, mostly knowledge workers. Actually, they weren't just L&D folks; they were folks from different sectors. You know, what's their preferred development? What do they like? And I think we know the story, right? We already kind of know that, you know, first off, people are going to remember information when they learn it on the job, when they can directly apply it to the job. And that's what this survey finds. They prefer on-the-job learning. So, you know, give me a stretch assignment, give me a cross-functional assignment, something like that. Delegate something to me. And here, this is interesting, this last bar graph. I think we know this too, but I think it's helpful to be reminded. The large scale trainings, you know, the cohort driven programs, you know, as much as we like it, you know, as much as we love, like, hey, let's get them into this cohort and they all kind of learn together. Well, especially the younger generations, they're not feeling that as much as small moments throughout the day. Because that's what, think about what they were raised with, right? Google, YouTube.
Oh, so even though that's true, they're still missing out. There are some social skills that they're missing out on that are needed for development at the higher up the ranks they go. So in order for them to become those high potentials, they need the skill sets that are developed in the large scale trainings, the interaction and the collaboration and the engagement.
It's a great call out, Neil. That's an excellent call out. And I think that is why supplementing the micro learnings and a lot of the things that Robin was talking about, supplementing that with coaching. You know, that as long as there's a coaching component to whatever it is, yeah, those things work together really well. 100%. The other thing was that, and again, this is no surprise to y'all, that most people, 74%, they felt that, you know, training and development had made them more productive. They were more engaged. They were happier. And surprise, surprise, they wanted to continue to work for the organization that developed them. Yes. So all of the reasons why we love what we do is because we know it makes an impact. Now, the challenge that I think that we still have is, you know, how do we get that across? How do we get that across? I mean, and there's a trajectory here, and how I was introduced to learning and development, and a little bit more about my background. So my father was a trainer in the Army, and he set up training centers, and he worked across branch. So he set up training centers for the Air Force, for the Navy. They've known about this stuff. They've known about this stuff since the 1920s. So they've known that if you continually train people, if you continually develop them, they feel good about themselves. It increases their confidence, it increases their competence, and also their loyalty to their division, to their branch, to their battalion. All of those things. And they also developed, so my dad was part of this Defense Department project called Training Within Industry. And training within industry was developed in the 1940s, 1950s, through to the 60s, and it later became Lean Six Sigma, the Toyota way, all that kind of stuff. So we've known since the 20s, reinforced in the 40s and the 50s, about all this stuff that I'm sharing with you. This is not new. Multiple data points validate all of this. Yeah. Yeah. Rhonda mentions the law of reciprocity. Yeah. You're investing in me. I will invest in you. I will willingly work harder. I'll work longer and harder if I know that you care about me, that you're loyal to me. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to, instead of bemoaning all of this, I want to talk about the fact development doesn't need to be expensive, because I'm sure if you were to present this to any of your stakeholders, they might be like, oh, the cost. Time out. We are not talking about the big cohort driven programs. It doesn't have to be that way. And I'm sure you've all seen this before, the 7-20-10, this whole idea that most of what we learn is experiential. And also social, a little bit less. So it's about 20% social. And this is not a science, by the way. When I looked at the data to reinforce this model, it's very shaky. It's not very solid. So 70-20-10, I think somebody just came up with so they could write an HBR article. That's my guess. But still, I think most of us would agree that experiential learning is the most powerful, the most impactful. Yeah, social learning and informal learning. Now, we also do know, then this is actually from the military learned this very early on. It's much better to get the guys out at the rifle range actually shooting versus reading about shooting. The formal classes on marksmanship have to involve practice, and more practice. So we do know this. In the Air Force, very famously, during World War II, when they were hiring pilots, they realized that the traditional mode of classroom training, okay, pilots, so I want to show you a diagram that when wind is hitting a wing, this is how you should, that didn't work too well. And it caused a lot of people to lose their lives when they actually started training Air Force pilots during World War II out of Florida. A lot of people died. So they developed this really kind of wonky thing, which we all know today because we ride them in Universal Studios. If you've ridden any of those rides where you actually move a toggle and you feel the whole thing go sideways and you feel it go this way, and then when you drop elevation, it drops too. So they developed all these really cool rides, basically, that simulated flight. And nowadays, of course, they have extremely sophisticated flight simulators. That is what we need to do. We need to do those job simulations, the coachings, the role plays, all those things that I think as professionals we know actually work. Yeah, Rhonda. I love Rhonda's comments here. Oh yeah, I can operate on your brain. I read about it in a book. Something that somebody shared with me is this, like, I'm learning how to dance salsa through YouTube. It's like, yeah, good luck with that. I think you're going to actually need to take a class on it.
Don't you need the other person?
Yeah, right. It's kind of difficult to do on your own watching a YouTube video. So what I would like us to do, I'm going to share with you, and let me plop this in the chat. Pardon me here while I get my chat. Bada bing. Here we go. Okay, so hopefully you can open that up. What I would like you to do is take a look at that assessment. And let me pull it up with you here. And this is something I do with clients often, is I'll just do a survey of, where are they? There we go. Where are they as far as their training and development? And I have an Excel spreadsheet version of this, but again, just shoot me, since we have your email, I'll be able to send it to you. But what I'd like you to do is just take a look at this and consider either your organization or the clients that you work with. And, maybe just do a quick assessment. How much of the experiential stuff are they doing versus social versus formal? So just, take a quick look at that. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, looking at that assessment, really answer these 3 questions, and I'll pop them in the chat. So again, just take a look at that and just kind of answer to yourself those 3 questions. And then what I'd like you to do, is put you into breakout rooms where we can talk about these things. So we'll give you just about 5 minutes to think through those 3 questions. And I really would love to hear your answer to that 3rd one, because I would love to know any tools or tactics that you have. So let's just take just about 5 minutes for that. And then I'll plop you into some breakout rooms where we could talk about it.
And Jonathan, you said to just look in the experiential section or the whole, every section?
Oh, yeah, look at every section.
Okay.
Yeah, for the first one, what type of development does your org or clients do they use right now? So look at everything and just
Okay.
be like, oh yeah, they do more of this, less of that. But for that second one, just focus a little bit more on the experiential stuff, because the experiential stuff, quite frankly, is the lowest cost of all of them.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just give me a thumb up whenever you feel that you're ready. All right, we got 1 thumb. By the way, it's good to see you again, Margie.
Yeah, it's good seeing y'all, you and Neil.
All right, thumb, thumb, thumb. She'll have thumb, thumb, thumb till her day. Sorry. You might be able to tell from my background, I like music. Okay, so let me form some breakout rooms here. And what I'd like you to do just in the breakout rooms is, discuss your either your organization, if you're an employee, or your clients, and think about your clients. What did they do most of? And, that second one, what could they do that's more experiential? Because again, experiential, I think we all know that's the lower cost. It should be the lower cost because people are actually doing stuff. They're actually, being productive. And then, boy, the 3rd one, please help me. Let's us all kind of band together. How can we make that case? What do you think are the best tactics that you could use to try and persuade the higher ups that, we should be doing more of the stuff and perhaps less of, the 20 interviews? All right, so let me see here. All right, I have the rooms ready. And when Neil comes back, I'll put him into a room. All right, so I'm just about to put you into a room. And again, just discuss your answer to those 3 questions, and we'll give it just about 12 minutes. I think 12 minutes should be good, and then we'll debrief when we get back. All right. You should have the invite. Welcome
That was
back.
fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to visit with us, Jonathan.
Yeah. Oh no, thank you. Thank you all for your great ideas. And well, certainly, so I want a solution for that third one. So my expectation is that y'all are going to give me some great food for thought on how we can shift the conversation resources to, okay, hiring, yes, and development is equally important, minimum. So so let's just start with that first question. So let's just keep it open. We're a small enough group. What did you come up with for that first question? What type of development does your org do right now, or your clients?
I think
Go ahead, Rhonda, if you want
I
to.
love how everybody was waiting and then we all started at the same time. Go ahead, anybody.
I was just going to say I worked last for a city organization, and I thought they were really good with what they call career development opportunities. So being able to apply for a job you don't have all of the minimum qualifications for, and being able to do that for a period of time. I think they were also pretty good with special assignments and stretch assignments, though what I found was those were your high performers typically. And what was happening is we didn't change their everyday job requirements in order to do that. So people would get burned out from that, or, not really be able to put in the time they want. And so those 2 things, I think they really did rather well, though I think they still could, there's some work still to do with that.
Cool. Anybody else? You're on mute, Margie.
I was fascinated to learn. I've worked with some big companies in the past, and then I've worked with a group now. It's more of a I'm still kind of a contractor position, so I don't know the ins and outs of some of their stuff. But I was really fascinated to hear the others in the group talking about how they've been in companies that have never done development, even if it's twice a year, and that surprised me to not have any kind of development activities. So and from what I gather and what I've seen mostly where I am, it's mostly formal training, which quite honestly can be kind of boring. And that's what I've observed. I'm hoping that there's other stuff, but I don't know to that level. But I was very surprised that there are organizations that don't have development programs.
Well, that's in some ways that's good news for us.
That they don't have them?
Yeah, because hey, outsource, we'll do it for you, right?
Oh,
So
but yeah, that's true.
right. So there's pros and cons to that, but yeah, I think in general, yeah, we've experienced that. And since I know Rhonda's organization very well, I know that context. It's especially for the trades or blue collar manufacturing. Sometimes you see, we don't have time for that. Which is why they have a problem recruiting and retaining people. So what about that second question? So considering, I think we'd all agree experiential is best. What is it that you could do for either your clients or your current organization to, get them to start doing more of that stuff, or what stuff would work?
So we've actually started trading people for different locations. Inventory is a big issue in the warehouses. So some of our MITs, our trainees are really good with organizing bin locations and keeping up to the inventory and so forth and so on. One of the locations actually hired an external consultant to come in and optimize their warehouse. So we have somebody else who's really good at it. So we've paired the two of them up, and now they're going to be traveling to other locations to optimize their warehouses internally. So we're no longer paying an external person because these guys need the experience. And it's kind of like each one teach one. So we've been bringing them together so that they can talk about the different tips and techniques that they're using in their warehouses. And then somebody's like writing it down like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then they go travel somewhere else. And then they say, hey, well, you know what? We do it like this over here. Or, hey, I heard such and such, and this is what they're doing. And it's been very whatever, you know, so that's kind of one thing that people could do.
Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
Kind of a combination of a lot of those. It's kind of a stretch assignment, task force, and meanwhile they're networking. So,
And job rotation and, you know,
Yeah.
everything, experiential learning, all of it. Teach back. Yep. Mhm.
so since we're right at the end here, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that last question. So to what extent, you know, are you willing to make the case that things could be shifted? And, you know, how would you approach it? How could you approach your stakeholders that we need to make this shift?
I think particularly with the task force and project assignments area, or, you know, when you talk about matrix organizations, you could almost say that it is less expensive and maybe even become a cost saver. Because if you get the right people on these tasks, they may have, you know, they may stretch, they may try to put forth effort, and they may actually come up with ideas, sort of like what Rhonda was just talking about, that maybe they can actually save the company money. And I think it could be almost, I was going to say less expensive, but it may actually be whatever it means to grow. I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but so it may actually be a benefit.
Yeah, well, a
Increase
win-win.
ROI.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I said something similar. I think my experience recently has been that I'm talking with executives, they want data. So really trying to look at what's the data showing us and creating metrics that we hope to achieve. Like, let's do this for a year, you know, or whatever period of time, let's evaluate it. Let's see the impact on that. The hardest part for us in training, I think, is there's a lot of things that go into job retention and, you know, those kind of things. So I think you have to be really thinking about good ways that we can measure also people's, you know, how they feel about the company. Do they want to stay with the company? Some of those things that I think our younger workers or what the, you know, the surveys are telling us now about why people are staying and why they're leaving isn't just pay and benefits. And so really trying to tap into some of those things as well.
Yeah, that's hopefully you have a progressive, if you have progressive leadership and a progressive board, you know, they might want to do that and say like, yeah, all right, let's kind of flip the script, so to speak, because that's essentially what you're trying to do is like all the time and resources for this, how about we switch it to this? Because after all, this is what people are asking for.
You know, there's a thought that, Darlene, you just made me think of. I know that a lot of, particularly you hear the younger generation wants to feel like they're making a contribution. And a lot of times I think companies say, oh, well, we are socially responsible. We are doing, I mean, I worked with Cox for a while and they had all this recycling stuff. But here's the other thing. I personally want to feel like I am contributing, not just the company I'm with, but I'm contributing. I have a strong love for helping people with disabilities. That's, you know, that's my area where I want to do a lot more work. It also, but by having some of these stretched assignments and doing some of these things, knowing, I'm off the top of my head, I'm sure that the company you work with, Rhonda, by having them go from different places, there's some efficiencies that are coming to happening in that organization. I'm sure that those individual management trainees are feeling like they're contributing at least to the company and probably in some level to the world. So I think they need to have it on both levels, not just the company.
I mean, it's a really big boost to their self-esteem, to their confidence in being able to be a future leader when they go someplace and they're like, oh, hey, how about if we just chart this up on the board? We put the routes here where everybody can see it. And they're like, oh, wow, that's such a great idea. Like they were just sharing those stories and you could just see the joy and excitement and the pride that they felt at being able to contribute. So yeah, you're totally right, Margie. Now back to your question, Jonathan, because I know you want an answer, right? And the only thing I could come up with is if it costs $60,000 to interview somebody, but it costs maybe $3,000 to $5,000 to invest to upskill, cross-train, you know, whatever, give somebody an experience at another location so that they can bring that back here, you're saving between 55 and $57,000. Wouldn't you want to save that? I mean, like, I'm serious. That would be the only thing I could come up with, because that's all they really want to hear. They don't want the fluffy stuff. They want the numbers. Like Darlene said, they want the data. You tell them that they're going to save $57,000 if they decide to invest in training and developing somebody, as opposed to trying to hire and interview. Yeah, I think they might hear it.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because I think at the end of the day, it is kind of a bottom line issue for many people. Again, as we all know, it's often the check signers that make the decisions, right? So the check signers are going to want to know, like, what's in it for the company. You know, I think the combo of, you know, what Margie and others have mentioned, the combo of including the employee data. So the employees are saying they want this. Oh, and by the way, here's survey data from SHRM that says younger employees want this too. So here you have the external market saying this is what we demand. I have a solution. How about we do, you know, 5 less interviews and to offset that money into employee development programs. And employee development programs are actually going to pay for themselves because, you know, I think it was Margie or Darlene had mentioned, you know, we're going to be cross-functional rotations. It's going to be a win-win. We're going to have people who are going to be energized by learning, and they'll be able to do different functions now. That's a win-win. It's that easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If only.
I happen to know the big boss for Rhonda's company, so I know you may not win the first time.
Yeah.
But I think if we keep making the case, I do believe that we can move the needle on this.
I hope so.
There's another thing. You said it's 50 times more that you spend. You can then train 50 people for that one person's job that they spend in the hiring process. And so, and then what could those 50 people do more on that training?
Oh, that's a great angle.
Nobody thought of that? Oh, yeah.
That's a great angle.
I mean, if it's 50 times, that's a lot of people. And I was thinking to myself, was like, wow, that's 50 years. You know, because when you think about the turnover, but 50 people could be trained.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So you could, I mean, you could do some quick math on that. You could do just a spreadsheet to say, look, here are the possible, because when I was an executive, I know one of the things I would ask is, okay, but the devil's in the details. So you're telling me cross-rotational. So that's going to take some of management's time. Oh, and by the way, what about the person who's doing that job? That job still needs to be done, right? So I would need to know what's the solve for that. Like, you know, I'm just thinking Donnie. Like, so Donnie's going to be like, okay, you know, Rhonda, I believe you, I trust you, but
Mhm.
we still need that division manager, that district manager to do their job, right? So
Mhm.
how is that going to work?
Mhm.
So you would probably need to have at least some examples, or at least get buy-in, I'm thinking, from those people that would be impacted.
Mhm.
So like in Rhonda's case, I know the players there. So like,
Yeah.
a Warren or a Gary, like to get their
Mhm.
buy-in on that
Mhm.
probably would be huge.
So let me tell you actually what we did in order to be able to get the distribution center managers training, sales training. So we have our MITs, right? We got most of them through the training first, so that when the DCMs go through the training, it's half day training for 4 days. Those MITs fill in for them while they're, doing that. You know what
Oh,
I'm
that's
saying?
smart.
So we got one group trained on it. And then when the next one is going in, these guys are filling in for them. So the job is still getting done and everybody's getting the training.
Oh, right on.
Hmm. Yeah. We've been very creative, Jonathan. You'd be proud of us.
As
Yeah.
I know you can be.
Hmm.
Well, cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for your great thoughts. This has definitely given me food for thought for how I can approach some of my stakeholders that for the companies I work with. I believe I have all of your emails. And I'm going to I'll just save this chat here just to make sure I do. There we go. So please, folks, feel free, and I will put in my email here. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. It's J Berman at thebestworkplace.com. Make sure I spell that correctly. J Berman at thebestworkplace.com. Feel free to grab my email. Feel free to hook up with me via LinkedIn. For those of you that gave me your email, we'll be sharing not only the slides, but also that worksheet as well.
Yeah.
Jonathan, we are not connected on LinkedIn. I just realized that.
Well, that is not right.
No, it's really not.
But thank you all. Have a great evening. And Robin, now you can go and actually have a full meal.
Right.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
gonna
you,
do
everyone.
that.
Thank
It was
you.
great meeting you, or seeing you all again, meeting you.
Okay. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. See you
Bye.
later. Jonathan,
Cheers,
I
y'all.
didn't put my email in there, but please send me the thingamajiggy. And I dropped my LinkedIn. We've got to connect. I cannot believe, all this time we have not connected.
That is just not right.
Yeah. All right.
So I'm going to stop recording. So I'm assuming that you maintain the recording on your side, right?
Yeah. It'll show up in the Zoom account after it gets processed, and then I'll